So this sermon is for anyone who has ever been a teenager, is a teenager, will be a teenager, has had teenagers, or will have teenagers. In other words, pretty much everyone. And the reason I was thinking about teenagers is in the latter part of the gospel reading, which we just heard, in which Jesus tells the story of the man with two sons. It made me think back to the days when I was a teenager. Now, I'm sure this is not true for any of you. It's just me. I was a little bit of a troublemaker. But sometimes my parents would tell me to do something, and I'd say, okay, with really no intent of doing it. Or at least had not firmly committed to doing it. It was just easier to say, okay. And at other times I said, no, I will not do it. I absolutely will not do it. And I was either shown the error of my ways, that often happened, or I got some sense into my head and I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. So it's such a human response, right? I mean, we all do this. I mean, we're not just as teenagers, well into our adulthood, and then as children, we learn early on maybe how to just make things a little easier by saying, sure, I'll do it. But you can bet Jesus is not telling this story as part of a teaching series on good parenting. Or is he? It helps to put this particular reading into context. He has just come into Jerusalem, the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and at least some of the religious authorities are anxious, suspicious, or downright hostile to him. And so they engage him in all these conversations and questions and trying to trip him up. And Jesus is just too wily to fall into their snares. So there's this back and forth. And the big question that we hear about today is, by whose authority did John do what he did? And the underlying question is, Jesus, by whose authority are you doing what you do? And Jesus, of course, doesn't answer the question directly. But we come to see in many ways that John's authority, and likewise Jesus's authority, comes up from what they do, not what they say. And so it really upends that old adage, do what I say, not what I do. In this case, do what I do and not what I say. Because it's really in the doing that we become followers of Jesus and true disciples. Think then about our beloved banner and bumper sticker that so many of us have on our cars. All are welcome, no exception. I love it, but also I see it so much now that sometimes I don't always remember how profound it can be. And I was reminded of that maybe a year and a half ago. I was talking to a woman named Jennifer Greenwood, and she said that she had been in a parking lot, like a Target or someplace like that, and she saw a car drive by with that bumper sticker, and she started tailing the car to see where this place is, that all are welcome, no exceptions. And so she finally saw St. Bartholomew's, which makes me think maybe we had a St. Bartholomew's bigger, but I digress. But that's what brought her and her wife, Vanessa, to St. Bart's, and they are now members. All are welcome, no exceptions. But it's not just about what we do on the church property, in the church per se, in our church activities. Certainly St. Bart's is a wonderfully welcoming place. I am often so deeply touched by the profound sense of hospitality I see on everyone's part. But that bumper sticker, that banner, is really about what we do in our heart. If we just do it in terms of church, then we're missing the point. Last week I was reading a meditation by Richard Rohr. He's got a daily meditation. And I'm sure many of you get it. Richard Rohr, if you don't know, is a Roman Catholic priest and monk. He leads a lot of workshops and has written a bagrillion books. And this is something that he wrote in his meditation last week, or one of his meditations last week. He said, Jesus clearly said, naming God is not the priority. Do not believe those who say, Lord, Lord. It's those who do it right that matter, not those who say it right. Those who do it right, not those who say it right, because the words can be really easy. We are clearly in a contentious period. I mean, I don't have to tell you that. If you watch the news for 2 minutes or just talk to someone, you're going to see it. And of course, it is heightened right now because of the November elections. Emotions are running really high. And once again, one of the values of St. Bart's is that not everybody believes or thinks the same, and yet we can come to the door of the church or in each other's homes or out in the community, lately in the park, and worship together. That is doing it right. But at the same time, I am aware, and I'm very aware of this in myself, that I am starting to really get maybe anxious, not just about the election, but about the racial injustice and all that comes from it. That's heartening and frightening. I continue to be worried about the pandemic and how the amount of anger that seems to be bringing up in so many people. So we are called now to do it right, regardless of what we say. And I think for the purposes of, say, what we do between now and the election, I hope beyond the election, that when we catch ourselves, and I'm trying to do this, it's hard, but when we catch ourselves starting to be incredibly critical or let's just say ungodly in our assessments of others who think differently than us, that if all are welcome, no exceptions, it means just that. So my decision between now and the election is to engage in a variation of a Buddhist metta or loving kindness practice. And if you feel so called, I invite you to do the same. The practice is very simple, and this is what it is. So just maybe sit back for a moment and think of someone you love, just maybe the most important person or being in your life. It could be a spouse, a partner, a child, a grandchild. It could be your loving animal companion, but just someone so important to you. Now, picture that person and either silently or aloud say the words, "By the grace of God, may God's blessings be poured upon you." Next, I invite you to think of someone that you like, just taking it out a little bit, but maybe not quite the same level as the first person. It could be a neighbor, a friend, but someone that you have good feelings for. You really enjoy them, like them. And once again, think of that person and say, "By the grace of God, may God's blessings be poured upon you." Next, I invite you to take it out to another level and think about somebody you're neutral about. It could be the mail carrier. It could be the person at the grocery store. You don't have good feelings or bad feelings about him or her. You're neutral. Picture that person. By the grace of God, may God's blessings be poured upon you. And now, maybe the hardest. Think of someone you really don't like. are suspicious of, have really bad feelings for. Picture that person. By the grace of God, may God's blessings be poured upon you. And finally, I invite you to think of all creatures, from bugs to people, those you like, those you don't. Same thing. Envision the whole of creation. By the grace of God, may God's blessings be poured upon you. Now, I have no idea what's going to happen in my own heart as a result of engaging in this daily practice, or however many of us plan to. But I do know that God is going to be in the midst of it, and something's going to happen. That something will change in our hearts. And if it can happen to us, it can happen to others. Once again, from Richard Rohr's column last week, and in this case, he was quoting a woman named Allisyn, and she wrote this while she was in a concentration camp during World War II. Eddie said, "There is a really deep well inside me, and in it dwells God. Sometimes I'm there too. And that is all we can manage these days, and also all that really matters. That we safeguard what little piece of you, God, is in ourselves. That we safeguard whatever little piece of you is in ourselves. All are welcome, no exceptions."